described your brain as always moving, right? Always thinking,
Oh,
always going
I can't.
on. Like, what is that like from the inside of your brain? To try to
I,
describe that for us.
I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's because it's moving so fast. I can't think of a good comment. That's funny. Kind of funny, you think? No, I'm all. I mean, I while I'm talking to you, I'm anticipating other things. I'm thinking about something I've got later today. I know I got to go get another leg brace today.
Mm,
It's just always playing, and that's where I think the ADHD. I control it, and I don't think they had words for it back when I
sure.
was younger, you know, and I didn't like school. I mean, I didn't mind school, but school was boring because I came off a big farm and driving tractors and flying planes and doing stuff. I mean, not by the time I was 14, I had already soloed, and I had lots of hours in with my dad. And there was always other things to do. So school is boring, sitting there listening to a teacher.
Having to
It's like
sit
we had an ag
still,
instructor.
like, yeah.
Oh man, it's terrible. It's like, what are you doing looking out the window? And there's a good meme that's got a picture of a semi tractor and it says, I remember when my teacher told me I'd never make any money looking out the window. And here I've been doing it for 40 years and I've made $2.7 million and I own I'm debt free and I got two million in the bank and all I did was look out a window for 40
Yeah.
years. It's
I,
like,
I just wish
you
we could
know,
stop giving advice like that to younger. I hear it time and time again, and it's just like, you're never going to be anyone. You're never going to get anywhere if you're like this. It's like, that's so not true. You don't have
yeah,
no idea what the world is going to be like.
no. And I grew up with parents. My mom was a teacher, taught music and some other stuff, and taught piano lessons in the evening. My dad was he was a high school graduate, but he was always on the board of education or president of the board or something. And he was an entrepreneur on top of everything else we did. So I was raised with that, and there's a lot of good words out there and good little sayings that people don't hear anymore. And I use them with my kids and with my grandkids, our adopted kids. If there's a will, there's a
Yeah.
way. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. You just have to do it. But you got to
Yeah.
believe that. You have to get that in, and you don't hear it once. You have to say it again and again and again and again, and sometimes a different way. But that's true. What you're saying is, I don't think teachers, it's like, they're not the
I
same
mean,
as
it's
they
well
were.
intentioned, but it's also really crippling for some people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people like listening can recognize the feeling of like constant motion in their brain. I know I can resonate with that. I know sometimes it can look like ambition from the outside, but it can also be just like hypervigilance or problem solving, creativity, urgency, all
Well,
happening at the same time, right? There's always a song in the background of my head.
yeah, and kind of where you're going with that and I'm going to bounce back on that
Yeah,
because I
please.
kind of got off track, is that's what I'm doing. It's like I'm always problem solving. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, or when I'm in I have a van that I put my power wheelchair that I'm sitting in, and I transfer into the driver's seat and I use hand controls and, how can I get better mileage? How can I do this? What can I do there? I check my time. I know where it's going to be. I'm very detail oriented. It's like, when I come back, I want to make sure I remember that because that can apply to something that Ron Sosa needs to know some information about that I need to remember to tell him that. So, it's just, I try to reach out and help. I sent myself 5 emails during the night last night because my brain was
Yep.
thinking. And during the night, I sent myself an email to make sure to check on this for so and so or help, find out more information about that or take care of
Um,
something. So it's not in a bad way. It's just always thinking about, gosh, I got to remember tomorrow to do this or, what do I have? And I look down the road and I think that's something that people don't do much anymore that are younger. And that's look ahead 5 years. Look ahead 10 years, look ahead 20 years, because time is going to go very fast. I spoke to a class of about 160 kids over here at a high school here recently, and they were all seniors. Half of them were ROTC and the other half were just seniors. And and during that, towards the end, they wanted me to talk about resilience and positive attitude and determination and all that, and we talked quite a bit. And it was kind of the end of the thing, and I said, by a show of hands, in just a minute, I'd like to know how many people in here remember being in eighth
Mm.
grade. Being in eighth grade and remembering how old seniors in high school are. They're big. They're driving cars. They're driving pickups. Or they got a job. Or they got a girlfriend. Or they're doing all this stuff. And they're all. I'm never going to make it. That's a long way. 4 years.
Long
That's
way to
terrible.
go.
I'm never
Yeah.
going. Do you remember how many? How many? Raise
Mhm.
your hands. And everybody
Yep.
raised their hands. I said, okay, now you all are seniors. You all are going to be graduating in the next 5 or 6 weeks. How many of you realize and can look back at eighth grade and it was just like it was a week or two ago? How fast time went? Raise your hand. Everybody raise their hand. I said, okay, what I'm trying to do is pass on the message that if you don't think about your future and what you want to do and work on it and be consistent with it, have discipline and consistency, then the bad news is the next 20 years are going to go as fast as your last four just
Mhm.
did.
Mm.